Welcome, Anne-Marie, and thank you for coming. You're leading this project, the Fourth Industrial Revolution for the World Economic Forum. First of all, what exactly do you mean by the Fourth Industrial Revolution?
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. When we talk about the Fourth Industrial Revolution, we're really talking about these new exciting emerging technologies that are already taking part in our lives, such as drones, self-driving vehicles, biotechnologies, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, robotics, gene editing, neurotechnologies. All these new technologies that are not just changing the way that we produce in our industries, but they're also changing the way we consume, the way we live, the way we love, the way we learn, and even what it means to be human. So for us, the Fourth Industrial Revolution is, first of all, it's really something that is still yet to happen. We're at the beginning of this grand societal transformation.
Yeah.
And we use the term in a very normative way. So to say it's very dependent upon us as a society and communities, as business leaders, government leaders, societal leaders, to make sure that it becomes an inclusive, sustainable, equitable one. Because that is not given. It really depends on how we develop and integrate these technologies.
Yeah. Some of the things you mentioned, 3D printing, genetic altering, this artificial intelligence, this is something we sort of know of, but in the context of it controlling our lives and being such a meaningful part of it, sort of sounds like sci-fi. I mean, what kind of time frame are you talking about? Is this something that will happen for us, people our age, or is this just for the children, or are you talking about a very short time frame? What can we expect in this?
It is happening already now.
Yeah.
And I think that by having these conversations, we actually become more aware that it is really having a grand impact upon our lives already now. Parts of policing, education, our healthcare system are already very much controlled by artificial intelligence. And those algorithms behind how we then either have the uptake to our universities, what kind of diagnosis or medicine we give in our hospitals, or where to make our policing, is really dependent on the data that we've been collecting for decades now. So I want to say we're very much already in it. I mean, self-driving cars are being tested all around the world. The biotechnologies have really made huge leaps within very few years about gene editing, where we can sequence our DNA, we can understand what we're made of, and then we can just try to fix it.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to say that we are right now at a crucial moment in time to make the right decisions.
Yeah.
Because artificial intelligence builds on data, for example. And data is a mirror of history. Data is human history collected into small bits that we then have these algorithms to learn from. And if our human history is not the way we want to go forward in the future, if it's been racist, if it's been gender biased, if it's been favoring some people over others, if we don't provide the right data or the right algorithms to teach our educational system, our policing system, or our healthcare system, we are going to make the same mistakes that we did in the past. So by having these conversations about how do we use technologies, why do we use technologies, what are the values behind how we integrate them and how we design them, I think that is really at the core of the conversations we need to have right now.
And I agree. This is the conversation that's going on all over the world. Are there any specific dangers or something you need to be aware of right now that you need to be proactive in changing or setting some rules? Something that you worry about?
Tremendously.
Yeah.
I think having conversations about the ethical framework for how we develop these technologies. For quite some time, we very naturally had engineers and software developers creating much of these technologies in their development. But as soon as if an algorithm starts impacting our criminal justice system, how much knowledge does an engineer have alone about criminal justice systems? That has to be a collaboration between that engineer and software developer and a judge and people knowing about basic human rights and criminal justice. The same goes for healthcare. We need to have a far better collaboration between these different professions. Otherwise, my fear is that we're going to develop technologies that are not human-centered and that are not fulfilling a potential of a better, more prosperous future. And the same goes, and just one more, I think the same goes on a global scale. 3D printing right now, we can now start 3D printing in, I think, more than 500 materials. And that's everything from construction to textiles.
Yeah.
While we can start creating textiles far closer to home, that will have a wonderful and very important impact on climate change and not having to ship clothing all over. But we have millions of people that are employed in the textile industry in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
What are
Some
they
of the
going
poorest parts of the world.
Exactly. And we need to have also global conversations around this. Because as we use one technology in one part of the world, it does have an impact in another part of the world. And that impact is not always, completely positive. Yeah. It requires new policies. It requires new governance models. It requires new incentives for these technologies to be integrated positively into society.
I mean, this is like I said, a big part of the discussion happening all over the world, and you're aware of it in the political spectrum. Jobs are disappearing, and that's not only in the developing countries. That's going to be everywhere, and with a less need for manual labor. Are you afraid that this is going to? Are you afraid that the politics are going to get in their own way? That they're going to try and stick to what they're used to the early part of the 21st century, and with legislative force or isolationism of some kind, and how can we prevent that from happening?
I think we have an amazing opportunity right now to change our mindsets, our models, the governance structures that we've been having for the past decade, and which really served us very well in creating more wealth and more prosperity and amazing development. But we are at a very crucial time right now where we need to change the way we do politics, the way we do governance, the way we do private governance and civil governance. We are standing in front of 21st century technologies, and the way that the pace of which we use to regulate is just not keeping up with the fast pace of these technologies. We need to have the courage, I think, also to not just govern the technologies, but the systems they're impacting, our social security system. We can either take this as an opportunity to close the smaller loops and make sure that the ones who will lose their jobs to automation gets something that they can make a living off, or we can use the opportunity to say, what type of labor market would we like in the future?
Yeah.
Why do we work? What is the meaning of working? And how do we make sure that that meaning is something that every individual in the labor market can have?
Yeah.
Can we have a more sustainable labor market? Can we have one where fulfilling one's individual dreams and a broader purpose can actually be taken into account? And that requires, I think, drastic reforms in almost every single country in the world, and also a global conversation on this.
Yeah. I want to talk about the education system in a few minutes. I'm sure I'm not the only one, but all these changes sort of shout to me that I should be studying computer programming every night to be able to compete, maybe just in the next few years. But I know that you aren't. So, you think we need to teach, on a broader spectrum. We need not only programmers, but people with all kinds of knowledge and skill sets.
Indeed.
That's right, yeah.
We obviously wouldn't have gotten to this place of development if it wasn't for very talented engineers and software developers. But I think as we move forward, there is equally need for creativity, complex problem solving, collaboration with others, coordination, human resource management. Because these technologies, as the systems get more and more advanced, they also get more automated. There will be no need for me to do algebra by hand, because I will most likely have a machine being way better at doing that.
Yeah.
But we need to educate across the board, whether it's natural sciences and social sciences, I think with a bigger focus on values and ethics in order to steer these the trajectory of these technologies.
Yeah.
And having people that can take the discussions on what are the systemic impact of one technology, how is that impacting not just that little tiny area where we're putting it in, but how are the broader impacts of it. I think that is really going to be crucial.
Yeah.
So having those conversations between the natural sciences, the social sciences, the political sciences, the humanities, I think that is really crucial. So a more cross-disciplinary education model. I think we're also going to be learning a lot more because we're going to look into lifelong learning.
Yeah.
I think that is the more important parts of future education.
Yeah. We have a country like Iceland that's quite small. Do you think there are some opportunities for us here to be proactive in having this discussion and changing our lives to be able to integrate this kind of new world that you're foreseeing?
I think you're actually perfectly situated to do so. We're looking into a future where a lot of this is unknown. And as you asked about earlier about sci-fi, we're looking into a future with flying cars and where we can all become 120 years old and all these wonderful opportunities, but which is still just sci-fi.
Yeah.
In order to make that happen, we need to start experimenting with new politics, new collaborations, new partnerships, focusing on new types of technology development. So for that reason, I think because Iceland, of its size and of its very homogeneous population that's also very well educated, is a great place to actually start testing and experimenting in this. And at the same time, after a few days here and having various meetings with people, I think another thing that Iceland is particularly well situated for is to have this perspective of sustainability. It seems like it's so deeply integrated to all parts of industries and lives and community values and family values and individual values as well. How do we make decisions in our industries, in our technology development, in our export models, in our business models that really honor sustainability, where sustainability is integrated across the board? I think those learnings, many countries around the world is going to be looking to Iceland in countries such as this one, where it's so deeply integrated, because that is what we're talking about in the fourth industrial revolution. It is to have inclusivity, sustainability, fairness, to be far more integrated in all our incentives, our educational curriculum, in our organizational models, in our political mindsets. Yeah. And so I think actually in that regard, Iceland is a bit ahead of the rest of us.
Yeah. About the education system, I mean, it obviously needs to become better prepared and more flexible. What do you advise those who have the power to do the necessary changes to do right away, and where in what direction to head with our education system?
I want to mention three things. First of all, it is to be very open and willing to change the existing. I think making an educational system that is ready to the challenges of the fourth industrial revolution, it's more than just adding a few subjects and having coding as part of the curriculum. Yeah. It is to fundamentally change the way we learn, because this is not so much a matter of subjects, it is a matter of process. The way we learn, because creativity and complex problem solving is hard to put on any schedule for a kid or a young one. It is really about the way we learn, the way we interact with each other, the way we interact with the technologies, the way we discuss values, the way we interact with nature. So the first thing is really to be open and be bold in terms of saying, let's try and test and push these limits. The second one is to make an educational systems that can contain people of all ages. For now, I am almost 100% sure that I will not know what my job will be in 30 years. Yeah. And I don't know what skills I will need. What I do know is that I will have to go back to school again and again and again. And that requires we have a school system that is not just made and attractive for when you're between 5 and 25 years old, but also one where you are 40, and when you're 50, and when you're 60, it's still attractive and interesting and a playful place to go in. Yeah. And then the final thing is we will need to, I think, invest quite heavily. There is and that goes not just for any individual country, but globally. Education will be a key force for this. And investing into our educational systems and our children, but also all generations, will be absolutely crucial. And it is not about, for me, it's not just about having a labor force that is ready to tackle challenges and take jobs in the fourth industrial revolution. For me, it's really about social mobility, fulfilling people's dreams and visions and potentials, and having, and I think Iceland is already really at the forefront of doing this. So what I think we will see is that on a global scale, we will learn a lot from what we're already now seeing and learning from many of the Nordic countries, but across the world where different educational systems are really trying to put the human at the center, the individual at the center, and saying this is more than just learning math and algebra. This is really about fulfilling your potential.
So this is, I mean, how do we prepare for this? This is the education system. Is there anything else we need to start doing right away? Changing legislation? I mean, what are the first steps? What can our government, our municipals, what needs to be done right away so that this can be easier for our people?
Two things. The first one is a conversation about the values. Why are we developing technologies? What type of technologies are we developing? What are the values around them? What are the ethical biases and assumptions that we need to be aware of? Because otherwise,
isn't it hard to talk about ethics of some kind of technology you don't really know what's going to be?
It is. Of course, if I were to tell you completely how an algorithms behind an artificial intelligence looks like, I wouldn't be able to do that. But I can talk about the outcome.
Yeah.
I want that algorithm, whether it is deciding where I end up in the educational system, the healthcare system, if it's recruiting me for a job, I want it to be fair. I want it to be transparent. I do not want it to mirror past history lessons such as gender inequality, racist biases, social exclusion. And that conversation's around the values of how we're using these technologies. And the same goes for, I think, any single of these biotechnologies is a great example as well. Now with CRISPR, the gene editing, we are going to be able to cure diseases or eliminate diseases such as very severe cancers, which is an amazing opportunity for humanity. But it's also going to ask us some very critical questions. We've been discussing designer babies. How much are we willing to gene edit our babies before they're born? How about biohackers? What is that going to do in terms of our medication? Precision medicine, we're most likely going to live till we are 120 because we can now create medicine that is targeted just at your need. Well, what about the ones that can't afford it? Will it now be a social division between the ones that are poor and the ones that are not, which is not just about life opportunities, but also how old you get. We could see 40 or 50 years of difference in how old you become. And these are ethical dilemmas that if we don't start discussing them now, if we don't have values and ethics as part of our educational curriculums, if we don't insist between government and businesses, having conversations that are difficult and that this is new territory, and I think it won't be easy anywhere. But we do need to insist on having them because they will be so determined for our future. And we do have the opportunity of shaping a very positive future, but if we do nothing, my fear is that we will see a more dark future where some of the inequalities and the things that we are really challenged with today will just be exacerbated.
We're running out of time. I want to ask you one last question. You ended by saying, and this has sort of been the theme this whole conversation, that we have to have this conversation. If we don't, the outlook isn't very good. Are you positive that we will be able to? I mean, this is a global conversation that needs to happen if it's going to turn out okay. Are you positive about the outcome? Do you think we'll manage?
I think so. The human race is extremely adaptive and has in the past also shown that we are really up for taking the task. But I will instigate that not fear, but a sense of urgency. Just as we're looking with the Paris Agreement around climate change, this is one of the challenges that makes it even more pressing, discussing how are these technologies going to be sustainably implemented in our societies. As inequality is increasing on a global scale, as the social division in our societies and the bifurcation between different social groups are really harming our democracies, I think the stakes have never been higher. And the fourth industrial revolution can be a solution, but only if we take the responsibility across government, politicians, businesses, civil society, families, communities, to insist on these conversations, to insist on devising action plans and strategies for how to do this. And in that process, most likely learn that not everything we'll do will be the right thing, but that we can correct for it as we go.
Yeah. Anne-Marie, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.